here. Maybe. All right. All right. So do I have to again pretend that I don't know anything, whatever, like pretend to be the dumb
Nah,
guy?
let's talk more about just like our own particular interests, like why you care about it, why I care about it. I'll only talk to you about it in terms of what I've been doing, like I'm updating you.
Okay, so I can like just be smart. I don't have to pretend to be the dumb guy.
Sure, let's give
You
that
know,
a try.
like how I do, like I just pretend like I don't know anything about
None of
markets
this
and
is gonna make
whatever.
it in, Peter. None of this is gonna make it in.
We're live right now. Can't stop me. Can't stop me. Baba booey, baba booey.
Kick everyone out. It's like when they fake the moon landing. You gotta make sure you kill everyone who
Tom, okay, there is no moon. There is no moon.
I was talking to Melissa, she was like we're talking about the moon landing conspiracy. And she's like, so do you think, like, I think there might be a possibility that we never went to the moon. I go, no, you've gotten backwards. You're thinking too small with a conspiracy. I go, look, whenever there's a conspiracy, especially in the United States or any government or anything like that, whenever there's a conspiracy, the conspiracy always favors those in power. There's always some benefit that you could trace, some power or money. What benefit was there for faking of the moon landing? No one asked them to do it. No one followed up afterwards. Nothing happened. In fact, it inspired a nation and a generation of people to do things they didn't think they could do otherwise. It inspired the world because it's sort of like humanity went on there. And then they just went on their way. They didn't start a new war. They didn't say there's oil on the moon. They didn't come up with terrorists who want to stop people from getting to the moon or whatever thing worked in 1969. It was just this inspiring act and stayed there. Well, whenever have you ever heard of a conspiracy from the government that inspired a nation and they just left it at that? No, they always who's it that said Eric Weinstein? They lie in the direction of the truth.
I think it's Weinstein.
And so what is more likely is the case is that they've already been to the moon and they found shit there. And there's stuff in space and it's aliens and all that. And they're like, we can't let people actually see what's going on up here. There's pyramids up here, bruh. We're finding Chinese shit. Like there's all kinds of stuff on the moon. There's all kinds of stuff in space. There's pyramids on Mars. We're like, we gotta stop this. And so they broadcast a whole thing and they make it just fake enough where people go, like the conspiracy theorists go, we never went to the moon. And the other people still stay inspired. Meanwhile, they have control of the spaces and all that sort of thing. So to me, it's far more, because something happened, it's far more likely to me that we've already been to the moon, maybe before and many times since. And they were doing all kinds of stuff over there that we can't know about.
Well, we have telescopes that can see the moon.
We can't see the dark side of the moon. And if I was going to build stuff on the moon, I'd build it on the dark side.
Well, they found the pyramids on Mars.
Sorry, 1 second, the doorbell rang. You're going to have to like carry this on your own for a second.
No, I'm going to be on my phone. All right. Well, enough of this moon talk. All right. I want to get down to business, to the brass tacks. We're talking about what's really going on. And that's how the CIA made Bitcoin. Let's get down to it. Okay. I know you think Satoshi out there, he's just like a benevolent creator who unleashed Bitcoin onto the world and we all just get to enjoy it. Not quite. The financial system is collapsing. The dollar is falling into ruin. And the United States is going to lose its control over the world. It's a financial empire. But you release crypto, Bitcoin, onto the market, and you have control over that. Then you can save your economic system, transition over to Bitcoin, and no one is the wiser. No one ever has to know that the dollar was a failure. I think it's pretty smart. If Bitcoin benefits anyone, it benefits the government.
Did you miss me? I'm back, baby.
I was just explaining how Bitcoin is a creation of the CIA. But you already know that.
I thought you were just going to like put on music.
Yeah.
And sort of just like be there. Yeah. I didn't realize you could like say things.
Well, you know.
All right, Peter. So I've been almost every day that something happens, I've been posting on TradingView. post it on Twitter, post it in different places, just to sort of like, I realized I had no sort of step-by-step keeping track of the signals that my signal was giving.
Mhm.
Now I'm not, I'm only doing it for a little while just to get some content out there to show that, oh no, these signals, they do work and they can be predictive and all that sort of thing. They can be
Right.
helpful for traders, short-term traders. I do pay attention every day. I'm not really trading. I don't trade at all, really. I have other things to do. I program. But I thought it might be nice just to step through, just for my own, just to articulate it myself and for my own edification. You know, what's the point of building all this if no one's going to see it? So if you'll humor me, I'm going to do that right now. Is that okay with you? Is that all right with you, Peter?
Yeah. Okay. Hang on. Let me get my humor
Does that jive
up.
with you?
All right. I'm ready to humor you now.
1 second. Let me
It's a cute kitty behind you. You must love that cat.
this one. Oh God, I hate her so much.
You just
Sick all the
lost
time.
half of the female audience.
I take care of it. I mean, I'd rather not, and I try to not take care of it, but my wife won't allow that to happen. She loves it. All right, brethren. So I don't remember. I think you remember from last time we were talking about the idea that we had this flow signal, this green signal that you can see my screen, right?
I can see your screen and I can see the flow signal. And yes, we did talk about it.
So we had this flow signal.
But you have two more signals now. You have that H and then you have that yellow.
Well, we had that before. So this last one is the new one.
Is that the
Let's make
bounce?
it.
No, bounce is at the bottom. Wait, is that a bounce signal?
No, it's a dip.
Damn.
So the flow said, okay, more money's coming in. Then we had a slowdown just in price momentum. This high tide over here, this H doesn't affect, if you remember, it doesn't affect like the flow of money through the system, just the fact that this is some sort of exhaustion, some sort of slowdown that's happening. And then we had, so basically we had that. We had that, and then this red signal that showed that we were going to have a down on this candle, and we did. We had a nice down. And then I don't remember, I was talking to you and I posted it in the in ideas on TradingView. Where is it? Slide into a bounce. Is it this guy? Yeah. So this signal was showing, or this post was talking about how this monthly current was coming up, and if it kept coming up without the price coming down, it would eventually be supportive. If you'll remember, these currents like give power and energy to the price, right?
Right.
So like over here, when it fell down, over here, it bounced and got a bunch of energy. Over here, it gathered some energy and moved up. And so we gotta, what's been bothering me, Peter, is this idea that the dollar has been falling. I don't know if you've seen this. Oh, let me, I don't know if you've seen this. This is the dollar. This is the dollar. The dollar. It's been falling. And I'm extremely sus with the dollar. The dollar is like, the dollar goes up, bad news. The dollar goes down, good news. I mean, generally for the markets. Markets go up, the dollar comes down, and the market goes down, and the dollar goes up. And so you see
But
how
don't we want the dollar to come down? Isn't that good for trade?
No, you want your currency to be stable. That's what's good for trade. If it's not stable, then you don't know if you should be making a purchase now or not. You don't know if you know, people with money don't know if they should be. For example, if you were, let's say here, if the dollar is going up, then you are worried that you better make your purchases now, because in the future it might be, or you should use your dollars for, you should save your dollars because you don't know if you'll have those dollars in the future. Because if the dollars go up over here, let's say the dollar went up from, that's 24% move on the dollar, 24%, right? Can you imagine that? So imagine you have $100, or right now, if it costs $100 to buy $100, and then in whatever 2 years it costs you 25% more, that's pretty tough, right? If you need to source dollars. So and if you multiply that by millions, billions, trillions of dollars, you can imagine how much of a burden that can be for different countries or financial institutions. So you don't want you want the dollar to sort of be like stable and predictable. You don't want these wild swings. But anyways, that's not what matters. What matters to me is this idea here that generally speaking, actually I'll show it to you in this idea. Generally speaking, the dollar has been in a bull market since basically 2008, since the global financial crisis, and has been moving up these plateaus. Right? And every time the dollar has come back down, it has not come down lower or much lower than the previous highs. Right? You see that there?
I do.
And so I'm expecting the dollar to eventually get back up here, to go up quite a bit to this new region, go above it and stay around there. In fact, I don't see why the dollar would ever stop going up over time until like the world changes and we no longer have like the dollar system that we have. Until that happens, I don't see no reason why this shouldn't go up. Plus, if we go by the rule of threes, you see how we had one period where the dollar went up, it hit this blue area, and then again the blue area, and then the third time it broke through.
Right.
And then 2008, it went up one time, two times, and the third time broke through.
Yeah.
So the rule of threes like shows up all the time. That sort of thing occurs often, where 3 times and then a new trend occurs. Over here was at the beginning we had it hit up in this area 1, 2, 3, and then fell. Like it failed to go up, and so it fell.
Mm-hmm.
So that was like a mini 3. Happens all the time. Over here we had anyways, so I'm expecting this all to rise here eventually, but it could take a year, 2 years, 3 years, like it could take a while. Over here it was like 2017, it hit the top and then only came back up in 2020. So this is like long-term plays. But the idea that the price would come down below this blue area, to me, I find that hard to believe, like for it to come down towards these this longer term support. And so now the dollar's crashing, like the dollar's fallen hard. It fell pretty hard from 2022 till now, and the dollar fell hard again. Now you think I'd be happy, because this would mean that my my Bitcoin thesis that Bitcoin would go up to up 30% in 30 days. Do you remember this? Because of this flow, in general, Bitcoin goes up 30%, 30 to 80% within 30 days of this green signal. So it looks like we're underway. And I was like, okay, that's fine. But the dollar moved, like the dollar dropped a lot. Like a lot. This is a significant move. And yet Bitcoin like barely moved. And this current came up to sort of like support the price. We even have a green dot over here that says, hey, we're bullish, but it's hidden against this dip. Like this dip that showed up today, I was like, what is going on over here? That means money's being pulled out of the system, at least temporarily. I go, that's not necessarily, I mean, it might be good for the price, but I don't know what that means for crypto. And I would very much prefer to see Bitcoin fall back down to this yearly average first, like around 22,000, before going back up, right? Like over here, where the Bitcoin fell and it hit this level. So it fell, I don't know, what is this, 15%, 23%, 20% to hit this level and then get energy to go to the next level. Well, it didn't really fall much. Like it fell just like a little bit over here. It just fell sort of like a little bit down here. And now we're supposed to head back up. I don't know. I find that hard to believe. So we'll see. What I am interested in is this idea that I've been making some upgrades for version 3 of I'm working on version 3 of Cycles. And if I go into currents over here, there's oh shoot, this is not the new one. Let's go with the new one.
Version 3, huh?
Yeah, I'm working on version 3. So over here we have our currents that you're normally used to. Let's just zoom out. And now, oops. So there's an option here in currents that there's 4 phases: tria, quattro, hexa, and nona. You know, just to be on theme with this whole idea of like cycles. And so right, quattro is the default one, but if we go to tria, actually this helps with like momentum.
Is this tria, quattro, whatever, part of version 3? Is it in version 2 as well?
No, it's part of version 3. And so what'll happen is that So what'll happen is that this one gives you ideas of the momentum of the price. It's not about like these long-term trends. It's about determining a trend, but based on anyways, the calculation for how to calculate these the strength is different on Tria than it is on Quadra.
And Tria is these lines.
Yeah, we're just talking about these currents here. So you'll notice that when the yellow crosses the blue, the teal, we're in this bullish phase, and when it goes down, we're in this bearish phase. It's just a simple way of saying, okay, what am I bullish or am I bearish? It helps with that. I'm also doing some more studies on it in order to get some more information. But I got the stuff from my dreams again. Like how I got the scripts to begin with. It said, oh, you haven't finished with these scripts. There's other things you can do in order to make them better. And for currents, it was that you have to so currents is based on sort of like, I don't know how much I want to give away, Peter. How much should I spell this out?
Look, nobody's watching. Just spill it.
Well, currents is based on it uses a base frequency of the universe, a base hertz of the universe, and then builds up time series based on that. And by default, currents uses this 4-base system, which provides the different levels that you see with currents. So that's why I named these guys over here.
A base hertz of the universe. And what's this? Where do we get this from?
Well, just like a movie has frames per second,
Mhm.
our brain is processing frames per second of the universe. We're not seeing every frame of the universe. We're seeing
So this is
just
not a base
billions of.
hertz of the universe. It's the base hertz of our brains.
Well, the universe is what we perceive. And so we don't know if it goes any faster than that. All we know is that that's the frequency in which we're seeing it.
Gotcha.
And so plus it doesn't really matter, since the markets move on a sort of the markets move on aggregation of human behavior, right? So it's our intentions, our behavior that matters. And so if we see at that frequency, well, that's the frequency I'm using.
So this frequency is determined by who? Like, who came up with this frequency? Like, where is this?
It's
Is
the
it a
frequency
number?
of how our brain processes. Like you have
You came up with this, or somebody else came up with this? Where'd you
well,
get this frequency from? Is it a number?
it's a number, yes.
Where is this number from?
Well, the number I got was from I got the system from to do this from my dreams, and then I was having trouble remembering what the base frequency was, and then Melissa, my wife, she's the one who said you should use this base frequency, because the other frequencies I was using wasn't working exactly right. It was a little bit off, and then she gave me one that worked, and then when I looked it up, it turns out this is in the zone of the frequency of the human sight.
Looked up what? Where? ChatGPT?
Online, if you look at the frequency of sight. So I believe
You gotta stop assuming that everybody knows what you're talking about. This frequency that you looked up online, all of that is just gibberish. So what frequency looked up where online where? Like, what are you talking about?
So when you're just like when you see a movie, there's a number of frames per second.
Mhm.
And the more frames there are per second, the smoother that signal is, the smoother that movie is, right?
Yeah.
Now, you can't get any smoother
So there's
for us
24 frames
anyways.
per second. There's 30 frames per second. There's 60 frames per second. 60 is way smoother. 24
Exactly.
is kind of choppy. If you shoot an action movie, you want the action parts to be 24 frames per second. It'll seem more jarring. Home movies are at 60 frames per second because it's way smoother.
That's right. And so 60 frames per second, if I'm not mistaken, 60 frames per second is like super smooth because we can't see 60 frames per second. We could see around 30 frames per second. So 30 frames per second or around there is the number I'm using as the base frequency for our universe.
And when you looked it up and it's in the range, where did you look this up? You looked this up in terms of biology?
Yeah, if you just Google How many frames per second can a human eye see? They'll tell you between 30 and 60.
I GPT it. I don't Google it anymore. I'm elevated.
Well, what matters is not so much the base frequency, so the number of frames per second that the human eye can see is useful, but then you go, if you're using anywhere between 30 and 60 frames per second, you can imagine that as you multiply out different types of levels, you can have wide discrepancies, right? As you get up to years and decades, you could be years off, dozens of years off, hundreds of years off as you propagate that error.
Off from what? From seeing?
No, from the cycles, from the scripts, the current script that I'm talking about.
Yeah, so I want to know that. How does the frames per second of our site affect your script? See, caught him in a caught him in a lie. He's nervous now. He's coughing to buy himself time to think about it.
The currents are just like any other moving. Let's take that again. So the currents, just like any other moving average, is using a moving average is just using a period of time, like how many values back in a time series. You might be looking 1 week back, 1 month back, 1 year back, and then you're doing this moving average. So as every day passes, you drop out the last day and you add a new one, add today, and then you have a new average, and that average then changes over time. That's how you get these currents that I'm showing you. So the question is, what period should you be looking at? How many units of time back should you be looking?
Mm-hmm.
And so the calculations I make is to figure out what are those periods of time. So what the base frequency does is that you have this base frequency, you perform this calculation, you perform this calculation, which then generates what are the different periods you need, like how many bars back you should be looking at, or how many seconds back, or whatever it is, milliseconds back should you be looking. And so I have a formula that generates an infinite list of these time frames, from all the way from short all the way up. It's sort of like a fractal pattern that every time frame is like the lowest one might be, I don't know, for the sake of conversation, let's say it's 33 milliseconds. So it could be a moving average of 33 milliseconds. So every millisecond it goes forward, it drops off the last millisecond and adds a new millisecond, and gives you moving average. And then as you do different equations, you have that period can increases over time, depending on what time frame you're looking at. And so that what calculations you make in order to judge what period is changes drastically. One decimal off, one digit off, whatever, and you'll have completely different levels, completely different periods that are being provided to you. It's sort of like if I said to count by powers of 2. So you could count by powers of 2 up, 2, 4, 6, 8, what have you. No, 2, 4, 8, 16, 30, whatever. You can double. But if you do that by 2.1, well, then it's barely any difference at the beginning, and then astronomical differences the higher you go up.
Right.
So that's why the frequency matters, because if you're multiplying out from a base frequency, 30 is different than 35, is different than 40, different than 60.
So doesn't that make the site, the 30 frames per second, just an arbitrary number? Like, what does it matter that it's site? Why don't you use the frequency of, how our hair grows, or the ratio of our fingers?
So like I said, I didn't know that any of that mattered until I programmed it. Like, I didn't know why my dreams were saying to program this particular thing. In fact, it wasn't, the dreams weren't even about moving averages. I was trying to understand in the dream, I was being told about um, the structure of human behavior, and what I mean. There were these people in the dreams that were telling me that people's behavior are all based on these types of cycles, and that any cycle where the period of it, which is to say how long it takes for one, if you consider a cycle a turn of a circle, like how that turn of a circle, how long that takes, if that turn is within your realm of understanding, if you're able to pay attention to the entire turn and see multiple ones of that, well, then that cycle is you have free will over that cycle, because you can make a change and then see it over time and then adjust accordingly. And so, and then but as that cycle, as that period grows and grows and grows, it takes longer for you to notice how your changes affect that cycle. So then you move from this absolute free will to, as the period gets longer and longer and longer, the cycle gets longer and longer and longer. It requires more effort, more vision, more intelligence to be able to be aware of that, and eventually moves into this realm of destiny. And each cycle that's longer than your awareness, now you are a victim of that cycle. You are
Subject. Yeah.
you're subject to that cycle. And so in the dream, these people were trying to explain to me the difference between free will and destiny. And it turned out that, or fate, and free will and fate. And it turns out that free will and fate is a gradient. It's not that you have free will or have fate, is depending on your awareness of the cycle, you either have some degree of free will, some degree of fate. And they were showing how you have cycles that are so small that there's no such thing as destiny for us. Like, we can definitely affect that thing completely. All the way up to cycles. There's an infinite number of these cycles, but there's cycles that are essentially the lifetime of the universe, for which all things subject to it, as far as we're concerned, is fate. And so they were explaining to me how to calculate the formula for that, how to determine where are these boundaries, where are these sort of like defining where would you divide those stages, those levels. And there's an infinite number of types of divisions you can make, but some make more sense than others. In the same way that of notes on a scale, you can have
So like
scales that are tuned to different things and different numbers of notes, and you have different types of music you can make. And if so an instrument is tuned in one way, it's or made in one way with certain types of base understanding of what is the level of what are the notes it's trying to achieve, what are the octaves it can reach, and all that sort of thing, where you can generate different behavior from one thing than another.
all right. So like if you're going to be dividing time, you can do that in an infinite number of ways. But if you use a second, a minute, an hour, a day, a year, um, 10 years, a lifetime, those are cycles that are meaningful to us human beings because we already operate in those increments or
Yeah,
think in
and
those increments.
that's right. And we operate in those increments, they're not relevant because we operate in those increments. We operate in those increments because they're so substantial.
The sun goes around, the seasons,
Exactly.
lifespan.
That's right. And so we naturally will make decisions based around that. So just
Interesting.
for the fact that how so since the financial markets are an aggregate of human behavior, well then, and some of these are cycles longer than many of the participants are aware of, right? They're dealing with information that not everyone has all the information. That means it's more of, there's more fate, more destiny in the stock market than there is free will, depending on how much information you have. Obviously, if you have more information, it's not, it's free will to you and it's destiny to somebody else. And so if you can, but because this is aggregated behavior, especially on longer time frames, what happens is that if something is going to happen, it's almost inevitable that it will occur in the markets. How you get there might be different, right?
So
So if I
this
were to tell
is
you that every day human beings is gonna wake up and go to sleep at night, wake up in the morning, go to sleep at night. Well, some people will stay up for 2 days. Some people will sleep for 3. But the likelihood is that they'll wake up and go to sleep, right? And now if I told you someone's asleep, you can bet that they'll wake up, right? Now, or if someone, yeah, you can bet that they'll wake up. Now, you might bet that if you bet that tomorrow morning they'll wake up, well, the person taking the other side of that bet, you're going to have to pay up a lot for them to take the other side of that bet. They'd be like, well, I also believe they're going to wake up tomorrow, so you got to pay me, way more for me to take that risk that I have to pay out to you, or I'm gonna have to pay you out some minimal amount or whatever it is. They might not even take the bet. Whereas if the person has been asleep for 2 days, right, then that changes the calculus as to whether you might take that bet or not, right? Depending on what information you have. So it might be like, well, I know they're in a coma, so I'll take the other side of the bet because I know they're not waking up they're not likely to wake up ever, right? Well, someone else might say, well, I'm praying to Jesus and I know they're going to recover and they're going to wake up tomorrow, right? So now you got a market. Now you got something that can be traded because some people have some information, other people different, whatever. And so these cycles, these currents that exist within human behavior show up in the charts. I didn't know this. Once I actually did these calculations on by hand, like I was going to say on paper, but I did it on an iPad. Did it by hand, and then I programmed it into. I was like, hey, I wonder how this works inside of the stock market, and I programmed it in there, and then it showed that these levels matched up with major moves. Right. So, for example, if I go back to the chart over here, and we're just looking at Bitcoin again. We're looking at Bitcoin because remember, Bitcoin is highly correlated with flow. So we look at the
It's
behavior.
like finding out the static on your TV matches the background radiation of the universe. Like, oh.
Right. So you see here how the price of Bitcoin goes up and comes down to this orange line. It goes up, comes down.
Are we looking
to
at version 3 or version 2?
This is version 2, but it's the same in all the versions of currents.
Yeah.
Goes up and comes down. Well, why does it always come down to this line? Well, this line is I call it a lustrum, which is around a 5-year average. Now, I didn't know that the 5-year average had anything to do with Bitcoin. Why is it not 6 years? Why is it not 3 years? Like, I don't know. It turns out that it's responding to this 5-year average. Now, lustrum, the reason I named it that is that lustrum is a period of time it was very relevant to the Romans. It meant a 5-year period. And so when you see stuff like that, you're like, okay, there is like somehow through the course of human events, people came to the conclusion that a 5-year period was relevant in some way. I don't know all the details why, but that's what they did. And then it turns out that Bitcoin is like responding to this.
Well, it's kind of like
right?
why we count by 10. Like we talked about 20, 25, 30, 35, like
Right.
makes sense to us. I don't know why.
Yeah. Well, that makes sense to us because we have 10 digits.
Yeah, but why do we have 10 digits?
Well, that's the other thing. It's sort of like, we have 10 digits because it's sort of like that's what's, because it's a base thing within the universe or within our perception of the universe, it's showing up that way. Other people, I think the Sumerians, they counted by the number of knuckles, right? So they have 12 knuckles that they can reach if they don't count their thumb, and they had a base 12 system. Right? Anyways, all these things are pretty interesting, but I just wanted to show here. So the 5-year turns out matters for the bottoming of Bitcoin, right? For how low it'll go, so but not for how high it'll go.
So when you imported this formula and you saw that Bitcoin was kind of bouncing off of this 5-year lustrum, you were like, oh.
That's right. That's pretty interesting.
That's pretty interesting.
And if it was just that, I could be like, okay, fine. Anyone could figure out that it's a 5-year moving average. Fine. But then you look at this fuchsia line, which is the yearly, right? And every time after a run up, if it crossed that area first, it would bounce off that area and then cross down. See how it bounces here and then falls down?
Yeah.
And then over here did the same thing, bounced off that area and then fell down.
Yeah.
Here it actually it bounced on the other way on the way up and then fell down. When you see stuff like that, you go, hey, wait a second, 3 times it did that? And where it fell down to was to the lustrum? That's interesting.
Just kind of creepy
Yeah. And then when you zoom into
or spooky, I should say.
when you zoom into more of like the daily time frame, why is it that the price hit up against this the year average, fell down to the lustrum, and then when it climbed back up, it bounced on the same seasonal level that was where these peaks hit before. These peaks all hit near the seasonal level. You go, what does that have to do with anything? It's responded to the seasonality. Interesting. Every time it comes back to the seasonal average, it's getting more energy or losing energy, depending on if it's a bullish or bearish trend, and moving from there. Right? Not for nothing, here the monthly average came up, and it's boosting the price. Right? It's like, oh, when it turns out that when this monthly average gets close to the candle, it goes up. When the monthly average gets close to this candle, it moves up. That's interesting. Right? It's interesting that that's given energy. So I don't know all the details of it. All I know is that it's interesting that these things are happening. And you could get down to all kinds of different levels. Like I've studied this all the way down to the 10-second level, the 1-second level, and you get different types of that. It's all matching up to these currents that happen within human behavior. It's just all very interesting and very fascinating.
It's kind of like
Look how it bounces. Right here it bounced, and right here it bounced, and then right here it bounced. This is a shift. I call it a shift just because it's the I name these things. The names didn't come from my dreams, but it turns out a shift, like a shift of work. Oh, it has something to do with it.
this makes me think of counting cards, or like at a casino. Like if so, when it comes to counting cards, like if you know how many decks they're using, when what they use to shuffle the deck, when the guy is going on his break or whatever, like if you had that information, you could more easily predict the likelihood of your winning hand. It's just that most people can't hold on to hold on to all that information, and so for them it's fate, it's destiny.
It's fate.
But if you
Exactly.
could, you would have free will. You'd be like, no, 18 aces have already passed, and the likelihood that this one is an ace is, you would be able to kind of tell.
Yeah.
So this cycle is this, it's like I cannot hold all this information in my head to look at this chart to make these decisions, but the calculations of cycles is kind of giving me an artificial boost to my cycle so that I can actually make better decisions within a cycle period that is greater than what I can retain.
Exactly. Especially since you have to pay attention to so many of these cycles, right? Because they're all the different cycles are interacting with one another. So, for example, there's a seasonality that happens in the markets where during the late spring and summer months, people go on vacation. And then they come back in the fall and whatever. So this is our whole idea. I don't know if you heard it before, selling in May and go away. So there's a cyclicality that happens there just through normal human behavior. And why is it that the people leave during the summer? Well, it's because it's warmer. Okay, so then it turns out that the weather and the seasons have something to do with the flow of dollars and the activity within the markets. You go, oh, okay, yeah, that makes sense. It's
And
called seasonality.
all that's in your cycles.
Well, no, that's a yes, but that's like a normal thing, right? That's a normal thing that seasonality exists in anything.
Like when Christmas comes around, everybody knows
exactly
they're going to be stocking up the shelves, and then they have to
precisely.
sell them, and then people won't have money in the new year, and so they'll pull back.
That's right. So the markets are filled with people who know these things.
Right.
So it's hard to take advantage of it as much. People know there's going to be less volume in the summer, so you're not going to get good odds then. Just like people know that when certain things are being reported, right? Every month, government reports come out and earnings reports come out from public companies or whatever. These things are things that people already know. So I was like, well, how do you get an edge? I'm not going to get the insider scoop of what the earnings report's going to be for Netflix before it comes out. I'm going to find out just with all the other plebs. So how am I supposed to get an edge on this? And this is where I find cycles, which provides this sort of like overview of a different type of overview than you might normally be used to, where you see how these time periods interact with each other. I think it's super useful. You're not basing your decision based on what the price is doing right now, right? You're not basing your decision on, oh, this ball is falling down the stairs. Let me try to predict where the ball will be in any given second. You go, it's falling downstairs. It's going to be at the bottom of the stairs. And when it gets to the bottom of the stairs, it'll stop falling. But the stairs are invisible, and the building that it's in is invisible too. So make that visible, and then you'll be able to make those predictions, right?
What I find wild is because seeing the cycles and seeing the signals on the chart, that's pretty mind blowing. Like I keep having to remind myself that I would have seen that signal at the time. This is not retroactive.
Mhm.
But what's even more incredible is that this came from your dreams.
Yeah.
Like, how do you feel about that?
I was not happy about it at first. Eh, well, the thing is, I'm always obsessed with why do things work the way that they do, right? My interest in trading has I mean, believe it or not, has very little to do with how much money you can make. That just makes the game interesting, makes it worthwhile, right? When I used to play video games all the time, I want to know. I play the video games thinking, how did the game creators think about making this game, and what are the rules they would have put in place to do it? And now let me play according to that.
Very
So
annoying.
dealing with the financial markets is sort of like, it's so fascinating because you go, it's an insight into the behavior of millions of people.
That's why I like it.
Yeah, trillions of dollars, and you get information that's like unlike anything at all. It's like the weather for the economy. So I find it to be super fascinating, and it was bothering me how why why don't we know exactly where the price will go? Why is it going up and down? Why is it cyclical? Why is there any oscillation whatsoever? Why isn't it just flat all the time? Like I don't get it. What's happening? And so when you have burning questions within you, it makes it easier for you to get answers to. It's possible to go into your dreams to get information from the answers. Peter, I learned this from Jordan Peterson. This idea where you can have he was talking about people who, it's like your DNA holds the resonant vibration of everyone that came before, and that's why the second generation blacksmith is a better blacksmith than someone who isn't. And the fifth generation blacksmith somehow has it in their blood. We like to poo-poo these things, but it turns out that if your father and your father's father and your father's father before him was good at a thing, chances are you're going to be good at it too. We're good at speaking. It's not for nothing. And so this
If your name is Smith, you might want to join a blacksmith and
you might want to be a
fabric.
exactly. And so I would regularly, if I had a burning question, I would regularly have dream characters explain to me certain things. I remember meeting the first banker. I remember meeting um, someone who claimed to be like Joseph Campbell, and to provide me information about like hero's journey. There's all kinds of things, people I met in my dreams. And then this one time I had this one dream I had, didn't even feel like a dream. It was like, it wasn't like a vision. It was like this something else. It was like I woke up and I was somewhere else, and I was in this library. And I go to this library, and a bunch of things happen. I had a choice given to me at the library, where the librarian gave me a choice of, so what do you want to read? This beautiful, large, golden library that went on like infinitely. It was this most beautiful library I had ever seen in my entire life. And I said, well, what are the choices? I said, well, you can go to the left or you can go to the right. And the librarian pointed to the left, and to the librarian's left, and I could hear adventures and cheering and roaring of crowds and dragons and clinking of gold coins and just fun and sorrow and adventures galore. And I was like, oh my God, that sounds so wonderful. I'd love to be that in that direction, to go in that direction and read those books. And then she pointed off to the other side, and I felt like this sort of like knowledge and wisdom, but no adventure at all whatsoever. And the librarian said, well, if you go to the left, you'll have a life of wonderment, and it'll be exciting from moment to moment, and you'll never know what comes next. But that's all it'll be. It'll just be entertaining. And if you go to the right, you will get the answers to the questions that have been plaguing you your entire life about the nature of the universe, about purpose and destiny, and all the answers to all the things you ever wanted to know. But you will no longer have any adventures, and you won't be lifted up onto the shoulders of people, and your name won't go down in the history books as a brave and courageous person, and no one will ever know you for that. You might never be known. And previously, I would have gone left. Are you kidding me? I would have gone left immediately. Are you out of your mind? Okay, fine. I'll go take the adventure. But I guess I'm at a point in my life where I just, with much pain, turned away from the left, and I said, I'll go right. And the librarian looked at me almost as if I've been given this decision many times before, and smiled and said, "Good choice," and led me down to the right side and sent me off in the direction, told me where to go. So I went down these stacks, infinite stacks, golden stacks, infinitely high, infinitely deep. And I walked through, and I turned down an alley a row that I felt like I should go down this aisle. And I go down the aisle and I walk through, and there's books everywhere, just massive amount of books. And I look up and I feel I should go to this one book, and I pull this book off the shelf, this like leather book, large book off the shelf. I pull it, and on it says Cycles as the title. And there's an image, symbol of what I later learned to be was Metatron's cube. I couldn't have told you what Metatron's cube was before this, but it was on the book. And then underneath it said Tom Hartman, as if I were the author. I was like, excuse me? So I open up this book and I start to read it. And the first line, I start to flip through, and the first line of every chapter says, everything is like everything else. Everything is like everything else. And I go, hey, I know what that is. That's fractal. That means fractal. Everything is like everything else. It's a fractal phrase. And as I landed on a chapter, and as I went back to the beginning of the book, and then as I started to read the book, I fall into the book. And I just tumble through like this zooming portal thingy,
like a Doctor Strange kind of.
More like a sliders, but really quickly. And then I end up in this sitting room. It's beautiful, no windows to it. One large door, wooden door, but it's very ornately decorated. It's like a rich person, like a very well-to-do room. High ceilings, but not too big, but high ceilings. Inside there's like this black globe, and there's books, and it's interesting. But I was thrown by the fact there was no windows. And the door opens up, and this guy walks in who looks, imagine a Peruvian shaman. And whatever it is you're thinking, that's what walked through that door. Tall, sinewy guy, feather headdress. I don't even know what a Peruvian shaman looks like, but that's what I imagine. And he goes, Tom, you're here. Okay. All right, we can get started. And I look behind the shoulder, and I see a bunch of other guys there standing around, milling around out the door. And they're sort of like whispering, looking at me. He's like, oh, he's here. Tom's here. Can you imagine he's here? Oh, look who's here again. And they look all different. Some of them look like humans. Other people were in suits. Other people look like aliens, things I couldn't identify. But it was, I don't know, 10, 11 of them. And so the shaman's there, and he lays it all out. He's like, okay, you're here. So you want to know about the nature of the universe. You want to have answers to all your questions. Good news. We're here to teach it to you. And I was like, what is happening right now? What are you talking? Where am I? And so through it all, as I try to sort of like figure out what's going on, I could sort of hear my own voice still reading the book. I can't exactly make out the words, but it's sort of like me reading makes me go into this room. And then it sort of jarred me, so I stopped reading. And as soon as I stopped reading, I was back at the book in the library, staring at it. I was like, what the? And then I continue reading more, and I'm back inside of the room. He's like, hey, relax, Tom, relax, just keep reading. And then he goes to lay out this whole thing about how I can be part of the school and learn about the nature of the universe. And if I follow along with the exercises, they'll teach me how to be a shaman as well. These are shamans. And I said, yeah, of course, I love to learn. And then it turned into a thing where almost every night for about a month, this was November 2021, almost every night for about a month, I dreamt, I would dream, I would go read the book, and I would be in this room, and I would study, and gave me all kinds of different exercises, things to read, conversations with different people, and it was just so fascinating. I met other people like me who were also studying. I was like in this school, and I remember this one guy who would show me around. He's like, oh, this interesting thing is over here and interesting things over there, and you'd open up a door and there's amazing things. You open it up, it was like you open it up and it's like uh, uh Jumanji is one room, and another one you're in space, and then another one you open it and you're a different person, and you close it and you're like, what is happening? And it was all these different things that were going all over the place. And one of the things they told me, the shamans told me in the dream, was to make sure I didn't go and research anything beforehand. Like if I was going to tackle a subject, don't look up that subject beforehand. Let them teach it to me, and then go look up the information so that I could be sure for myself that it was true, that it was coming from my dreams. So I didn't know any of this stuff. And one of those, eventually I did this for a while, and then eventually I was like, I was interested in the stock market, and I was like, oh, I really want to know about the stock market. Like, I really want to know how to make money in the stock market. They're like, Tom, we have access to infinite information over here, and there's all kinds of other things. Like, we're prepared. We have other things we need to be doing. We need to prepare you to get you up to speed for these other things. And I go, I understand, but I really want to know how the stock market works. I would be able to predict it. It's really interesting to me. They're like, okay, like, what if you were able to live for 10,000 years? What if you were able to remember past lives? What if you were able to have powers within your world? I go, I want to know how the stock market works. And they're like, no, we can't be wasting time with that. We have other things to do. And then I would just not go back to the dream. And they started like whispering in my mind, and I could hear them throughout the day. And I'm like, nah. And then eventually I told them, I gave them an ultimatum. I said, you teach me how to make money on the stock market, or I'm never going to help you guys out. Because I got the sense that they wanted me for something. They for some reason, they seemed to have needed me or whatever. And I said, fine,
ultimatum.
fine, we'll teach you how to do it. And then it was like a month or two of studying the stuff I was telling you about. And then I programmed this stuff in, and I end up with cycles, and I end up with flow, and I end up with these things. And I was like, what is going on? So that was absolutely fantastic. They weren't very happy later on when I reneged on my deal and I didn't do what they wanted me to do. I said, what happens if I don't do what you want? They're like, okay, we gave you what you want. Now can we go ahead and do what we need to do? I go, nah, because what they wanted me to do, it was too scary, and I wasn't interested in doing it. And they said that if I didn't do it, I said, what happens if I don't do it? What of it? What are you going to do about it? They're like, well, you're just going to live a life of sorrow, regret, and then you're going to die. And then your next life, you're just going to be back here again. We're going to have to go through all this again. I go, okay, that works for me.
No,
all right, we'll see you later.
We got to get you to that. We got to get you to that. You got to do what you need to do.
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
Well, I started listening to them again now, and now they're providing me more information. Like, they gave me the upgrade to version 3 of Cycles. The ultimatum works really, really well on them. If I do their exercises and do their stuff, and it moves in their direction, they're helpful. And now they've given me enough information that I can do some things on my own, so it's pretty good. But
well, just looking at Cycles of what you
have.
have, yeah, I would be excited too. Just looking at what you have, version 2. I mean, I don't even know why you need more, honestly.
Oh, there's tons more. I could almost see it where it can actually give you, basically, you could predict exactly what the stock market would do. Exactly what it would do. In fact, there's such a way that it's possible. Maybe I'll say that for a different stream, but it's possible to. Okay, one of the things that I'm working on right now, it turns out that there's this resonances within the market. I kept thinking about that. That there's these shapes that you sort of like patterns. When people draw patterns on charts, this is a triangle pattern, this is a pennant, a flag, a bullish thing, or whatever, and they go, these things are predictive, but they're not predictive in that way, or they're very like rudimentarily predictive. What actually happens is that there's these resonances that happen with the price. The price resonates with throughout time and space and with the individuals, right? It's not just the aggregate behavior of individuals that are creating the stock price. The price then modifies the human being's behavior.
Right.
So you can imagine that this feedback loop.
Right.
Understandably, the price goes up, people are likely to chase it. It goes down, people are likely to sell it, and then people who play the counter trends. So that sort of thing resonates. But it turns out that resonance is not just between the price now and the aggregate behavior of the individuals. Somehow it actually affects the past and the future. Now we can accept that it affects the future. Yeah, the price is going to the right. So of course the price now is affecting the future, but it also affects the past.
Well, the past is looking to the future to predict it.
Well,
So you're saying it's affecting the past retroactively?
yes. So something happens in the past,
It's like
and you might
quantum,
not understand that the
quantum.
cause of that is something that happens in the future. Type of retrocausality. Because the behavior that's being exhibited is a multidimensional behavior.
Of course it is. Is this
Well,
something you learned in your school?
yes. Well, it has to be multidimensional
Because everything is.
because
Everything is like everything else.
everything's like everything else. So there must be vectors that are orthogonal to time or cross time, or that there's more than just the three vectors of with height and depth. There's time, there's different dimensions, and so there's no reason why the information of the stock market should be limited to the 3 dimensions or to the 4 dimensions, right? It should also be multidimensional because it's an aggregate of our human behavior. And if our human behavior is affecting it and we're affected multidimensionally, well, the price has to be affected multidimensionally too. So there's a way of picking up pings large resonances, and you can confirm a future price move because of a past price move.
Well, yeah, you can confirm a future private move because of a past. That makes sense. But can you
No,
confirm
I mean to say that you could be like, you could detect the resonance, like this thing that's occurring within the market, confirm that it's actually affecting the price by going, well, this is something that would have changed the price 2 years ago, would have affected the price 2 years ago. And if you see that that's the case, it proves that this thing is true, which means 2 years from then, it'll affect it as well. In the same way that an explosion will affect 360 degrees around it, this resonance will affect the price, because there's all kinds of movements of the price where people don't know, why is this happening? And it could be happening because the cause is in the future.
Well, it must be happening because of a reason. And if it can't be seen, that might lend evidence to suggest it's in a place that is unseen.
That's right. If a cork is bobbing on a river and you can't see the river, all you can see is cork, well, it doesn't matter what you think. Every movement the cork makes is because of the environment that it's in. There is no movement this cork is making that's independent or random from that. It's just that you have a lack of information of the river, the banks around it, the weather around it, and all that. If something occurs to this cork, it has to be because of some other element.
This is like the warping of space-time.
Well, you're not.
Einstein's fabric of space.
Well, you don't have to warp it. The space-time, well, that's a whole other thing. But it's a non-linearity to everything.
Yeah, it's just that Einstein realized that Earth was sitting in the fabric of space, and it was warping the space and causing gravitational.
Well, so it's not actually doing that, right? That's just a model. It's a model that helps predict certain behaviors. But for example, that model doesn't predict the quantum realm.
Right.
And so the model is not complete. It's just a way of describing it.
So if you can, won't you ruin the stock market?
No.
If you can perfectly predict.
No.
You're
the
going to
more
flatline
information
it.
you get, no, what happens is that the more information you get, all that happens is that the new norm for the behavior will happen on a higher cycle at the edge of.
Yeah, but from our
knowledge.
perspective, it'll smooth everything out.
Well, think about it this way. When technical analysis was initially developed, I believe it was in the dynastic China, it was helpful for, I believe, like the people who had to keep track of grain and all that sort of thing. and movements of different things, they came up with different types of technical analysis. They would keep track of these things, and they noticed certain patterns within it. And they were able to use what we now use as technical analysis in order to predict certain things. Like, oh, there's be a breakout, the price of wheat should go up drastically over here, so let's make decisions beforehand. And so it gave them an edge, right? And that worked all the way up till now. Technical analysis became available to everybody, like late 80s, early 90s. It became more and more available to everybody. And then now the behavior of the technicians affect the price. Like, because
I see.
people recognize that pattern, now
see.
something else occurs, but that new something else is also part of the aggregate behavior. So it's in the same way that there's quantitative systems that affects the price. So now the price is actually more volatile than it used to be, when you had to freaking call a company and have them send you a physical share. Well, that same behavior was happening faster now, so there's more volatility, but that then created more opportunities. You have people who then try to take advantage of volatility in one way or another and help dampen the volatility. And so all of a sudden now it's behaving in a way that's more predictable, but because both sides are trying to use their edge, their knowledge, and sort of stabilizes the price. So you can't get away from it. It's like trying to flatten water. It's not going to work. The more you move inside of it, the more unpredictable it becomes.
So you're going to create extreme volatility.
No, because then if you have extreme volatility that's expected, then there are market participants who take advantage of volatility. And the more they take advantage of the volatility, the more it dampens.
Well, Tom. All right. Well, I've never heard any of this before. I'm
It
going
was
to go
really
left.
fascinating. Yeah.
If I have that dream, I'm going left. I'm going left. We don't need two people going right. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Put me on people's shoulders. Let's cheer. I'll take you to the adventures and I'll tell you all about it. All right, Tom. Fascinating. Anything else you want to talk about?
No.
There's some price movement today. In our blockchain group, I saw someone talking about XRP spiking up, and any input there?
From what I heard, the lawsuit was settled and XRP is declared not a security, and so they don't have to worry that they're going to be closed down by the SEC or something like that. I don't know all the details. I don't really care. I care about these currents, and it's sort of like once you think in those ways, you don't care about the day-to-day movements.
So
My charts were saying from January last year, Bitcoin's going to go up. It's saying that Bitcoin by next year is at around $212,000. So around next year's time will be around $212,000. How we get there, who knows? That's what it says.
So your signal showed a green signal, and then it showed an H, and then it showed a dip. You were talking about how the dollar is going down, but you expect it to go back up. So is Bitcoin going to dip down but then go up? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. So the charts were suggesting that when I say go down, I don't know from what level, right? It could drop 50%, but if it drops 50% from 50,000, it's different. It's the charts can only tell me if it'll go up and go down, not necessarily the levels at which it does so. And so it looks like there's a run up in Bitcoin between now and January. Around January, a big fall, maybe even back down to the levels we're at right now, if not lower. And then a massive rise again and then it makes its run to 212,000. And then from there, it then corrects, I think 85%, something like that, and then runs up again afterwards a few years later. But I'd have to do more of the analysis, but it's from what I'm looking at right now, a run up, then in I think run up now to 37,000, something like that, 37 to 42,000, and then a drop, a significant enough drop in January to the point where you might be like, well, there's no point in getting in now, like that level, and then 212,000 by next summer, because we have a recession. Like basically, the recession data is like unbelievable. But it's weird. If I were just to look at my this is where my own bias gets in my own way. If I were just to look at what the charts are telling me, what my signals are telling me, it's telling me that the recession already happened in January and ended like in May, something like that. And that we have a run up going to happen right now, and the next recession happens like next year, and it's going to be real bad. There's like 2 recessions. But I hate the idea of being like, let me pick up the nickels in front of the steamroller until the steamroller gets here. It makes me too nervous. So the signals are great, but they don't make me any better of a trader. So that's why I'm much more interested in making them and selling them than going destitute.
It doesn't make you a good trader because you don't have the temperament for it, or because the signals
I
are
do
not
not have the
useful,
temperament for it. Yeah.
but the signals are useful to somebody who does.
Oh, absolutely. In fact, I'm eventually going to make a automated strategy that'll take it out of my hands. I think that's where I'd be good at. But and we need more data, more practice for people to. This is why I want another reason. People are like, well, why are you selling the script? Why don't you just use it yourself? Because I want a lot of people to use it in order to give me information. I need that data, that feedback. My dreams could only go so far. The shamans aren't, or the shams as I like to call them, aren't sitting around like thrilled that I'm asking them questions about how to make better signals. It's sort of like a kid telling you about Pokemons. They're like, can you please just shut up about this? We told you what you need to know. You studied what you need to study. Go do what you need to do and come back when you're ready to actually learn the next phase.
But I got to catch them all.
I got to catch them all. Exactly. I'm not thrilled. So
you
only
do
so
not
much
need to catch them all. Yeah. All right, Tom. I could talk about this all day. So let's.
So I'm loving. I posted on TradingView a lot. Good things, bad things. Sometimes I misinterpret the signal, but it's fine. So I want people to get the feedback.
So you're posting on Twitter. I didn't see them yet.
Posted on Twitter. I posted on Reddit. Posted on TikTok. Posted on TradingView. Everywhere. Just practicing my divination tool. And I can't wait, Peter. The next system I'm building, the next bundle is other than Cycles is there right now. The next one is Astro, which has to do with astrology. Which is another thing. Peter, I used to poo-poo astrology. Really, what are you even talking about? That's some girl nonsense. Why on earth is anyone talking to me about astrology, my sign or whatever? But then my wife has this way of interpreting astrology in a way I had never heard about it before. In fact, when she talks about astrology, it's like how my signals work. They're so dead on to the point where she'll be like, okay, the astrology is suggesting this. She'll either look at some historical time or something in the future. What does your chart say about that? And we'll look and be like, yeah, it's similar. Like it says that this will happen over here, or volatility will happen over there, or this is a good time for this. I'm like, this is unbelievable. And then when I was talking to the shams about it, they're like, yeah, you doofus. You think you're not separate from the environment that you're in. Cycles that are sorry, Google is talking to me right now. Can you hear that?
A little.
Okay. Cycles that are larger than you are destiny. So yeah, can you move the planets? No. Well, then it's also part of your destiny. And they're like, really? And the planets affected? Yeah, the planets start everything affects it. The galaxy, the galaxy cluster, the universe, everything affects it. And so there's no reason why to think that your birth, your time of birth, and the planets that were there around that time have nothing to do with you, is to say that your skin color and your family's culture has nothing to do with your upbringing. Well, of course it has something to do with your upbringing. How are you supposed to not be affected by that? If you're born during a time where there's massive storms all the time and bad weather, well, that's going to have an effect on your personality. So if you can affect that, or if there was like the gravitational pull of the planet, if the planet was lighter or heavier, if you were heavier or lighter, that would have an effect on your body and your thinking and all that. So why wouldn't you think the moon affects and makes women bleed every month? What else do you have to? What other things? It moves the ocean. You think you're 70% water. You don't think it has anything to do with you? Anything? a certain alignment of planet or flare of the sun can wipe out all electricity, all electronics on the planet. What are you talking? Of course, the alignment of the planets have everything to do with has things to do with you. Do you think they built the line in front of the Sphinx in front of the pyramids just for giggles? They built this huge thing and pointed it directly at the zodiac sign that was relevant at the time because they just needed to do something. I was like, oh, really? And then down the path of the I Ching and divination tools, are like, you're trading as a divination tool. That's what it is. Not any different than I Ching, not any different than Time Wave Zero, not any different than tea leaves, not any different than reading the stars. All of these are just tarot cards. These are all reflections, internal reflections of yourself. That's outside, because the outside world is it's always an internal model. Tom, get with the program, and I'd be like, oh my god, this is unbelievable. And since so many people poo-poo it, then you can have an edge. So the next package, I think that the next package I'm working on after cycles is, or at the same time as cycles, is Astral, which is all these types of I'm basically mapping on those types of things, those behaviors into the market. Astrology, horror, it's a whole other thing, and then Seer, the social thing, because I want to know if I spent so much time listening to financial influencers and FinTwit and Real Vision and all of that. I was like, there's a way of incorporating that information, those strategies, those types of thinking into a system, so that you can see in the past how right they've been, under what circumstances they've been right, what they've been saying in the future, and different things that align with that. Super excited for that. And then I have a quiet one in the works that have to do with multi-dimensional objects within basically a new type of trading system. But
the Metatron or whatever.
No, it's a type of multi-dimensional trading, that sort of resonance thing I was telling you about.
Right.
But it requires anyways, it uses Robert Edward Grant. You know who Robert Edward Grant is?
The X thing?
What? Codex? Yeah.
Yeah.
Robert Edward Grant is the one who came up. Did you know that there was no system before for determining if a number would be a prime number or not?
No.
Like, this is why we use prime numbers for like encryption and stuff like that, because you couldn't, if you use a number that had as factors prime numbers, large prime numbers, you couldn't decode it because you wouldn't be able to. A computer system wouldn't be able to guess those numbers. And so you couldn't narrow it down to get those numbers. And so you can only determine if a number was prime if you tested that number specifically. Robert Edward Grant figured out a way of determining if a number is prime or not. Came out a couple of years ago. And so he has this novel, I forget the exact name, but there's this novel prime discovery system that basically finds out all the numbers that aren't prime. It's a proof for all the numbers that aren't prime, and so any number that's not in that proof is the prime number.
Wow.
And I think
like
there's a way
of dark matter, dark
right,
energy, whatever.
And he was able to figure out, like, using a computer program, figure out the first 2 trillion prime numbers. So anyways, what's fascinating about that is that there's analogs with financial markets, and so I believe there's a way of using that plus the multidimensional resonances, like I was talking about, in order to create a type of modify a chart in such a way that it looks completely different, and this completely way that it looks makes it perfectly obvious where the price is going to go. But we'll see. You got a dream, Peter. Got a dream.
Sacred Prophet, everybody. Follow him on Twitter. Follow him on TradingView.
It's a pretty good episode.
Pretty special here. It's like I felt like I was on Joe Rogan all of a sudden.
We should record this.
We should.
All right, bro. Actually, let me just make sure this has been recording. Yes, it has. Perfect.
I've been checking the entire time.
I mean on
60
Zoom.
seconds.
On Zoom, I wanted to make sure. All right, man. Thank you very much for your time. You guys have been watching Sacred Prophet, and I'm your host, Sacred Prophet. Nope, sorry. You've been watching Bear Market Kings, and I'm your host, Sacred Prophet.
Thank you, Sacred Prophet.